Hi everyone, good to meet you all. My name is Chanukya. I'm an entrepreneur and a founder of a leading global AI startup. And that's me and my mom. We took this picture a year ago when I gave my first TEDx talk. And with that, let me ask this simple question. How many in the room have been raised by a single parent? Maybe you can help me raise some hands. Like some of you, by the way, I was raised by a single parent, my mother. I was 3 years old when my father left, and I turned 31 a few weeks back. And it was, today I'm very courageous to say that I was raised by a single parent, but until I was 27, I was not. Because of the societal taboo, and because if you were afraid, you would be judged. We lived in a patriarchal society in India, and where if you don't have a backing of a man, things could terribly go wrong. And we didn't want to invite unwanted sympathy. And well, today I stand before you to share the journey of purpose, resilience, and agency. Not just my journey, but the journey of an incredible woman, my mother. And with that, let me share her journey. She was 12 when she was forced to drop out of the school. And by the time she was 15, her father was no more. And by the time she was 17, she got married. And by 28, 22, my sister and I was born. And my parents were already going through a livelihood crisis. And it was at 25, her life went upside down when my father decided to leave us. And she was left alone with 2 kids, and she didn't really study, so she couldn't get a job immediately. But there was one single purpose that drove her. She couldn't get educated, but she didn't want her kids to suffer without education. So her sole purpose in life at that point in time was to get us educated and make our ends meet. And that's it. And that drove us to brush our skills up, join local convent school, and at that time she was getting paid about less than 10 euros a month. And after that, she really went on to do a couple of bachelors and then grew up the ladder. And that's when I learned one fundamental lesson from her journey. It's about finding strength of purpose beyond personal success. Here it was not really about personal ambitions. It was really about supporting us, nurturing us. And in her 27 years of career, she has impacted several students who went on to become doctors, engineers, and many more. It didn't just impact us, but it impacted several others. And while this was going through, she was battling with multiple jobs, a teaching job, and then after that private tuition. She was an absolute workaholic. While all this was going through, she had to put up with the societal taboo. Her opinions were not valued. Her decisions were rejected, and because she's a woman and she's poor, and she had to put up with all these things. And at that time, she clearly showed adapting to culture without losing herself. That is, she was laser focused that my only purpose right now is to bring my kids up so that they can do something meaningful and impactful in society. And that just drove us to this particular lesson that I learned from her. And this proves that our challenges don't define us, but how we perceive them and how we solve them really defines us. And that brings me to my third lesson. At that time, she was 25. Well, she could potentially take up different things. I mean, she could have decided to give up not raising us. She could have decided to get remarried, or she could have taken some extreme decision. But she chose not to. She decided to take up the responsibility and decided to take action of bringing us up. And that's where she clearly displayed the power of resilience and perseverance in adversity. And these are some of the fundamental lessons I have learned from her journey and which I took inspiration from. And it's not just about me, but also whoever heard, like when they took inspiration from. I hope that was helpful. And with that, I'm going to talk about my own personal journey, where how I learned lessons from my mother and took inspiration and applied in my own life. Right? So, before even I was born, I was already battling with existential crisis. My father never wanted me to be born because they couldn't afford. And this was me, few weeks old, and by that time, he was already talking to a few relatives to get me adopted, but my mom didn't allow that to happen. And by the time I was 3, he left us. And that's when we moved to the maternal family, and we got some shelter, and things really changed from there. Things were not same anymore. Things were more restricted. But I grew up seeing my mom, seeing her struggles, and my only purpose at that time was, how do I give a better life to my mom? But in order to give her a better life, I need to really spend time on achieving this objective, but I was not able to find time for myself. And why I was not finding time for myself at the maternal family? We were forced to do certain things. Like, for example, we were forced to do things that we disliked. For example, we were asked to do some daily chores, or for elders, we were asked to do some massages, leg massages, hand massages, and other things. And that was consuming our time several hours in a day and for years together. And we couldn't oppose that. And then when we stopped doing things that we didn't like, we carried the baggage of my father. We were told, you just give up like your father. And that was really haunting us, right? I mean, that's not something, that has become quite often, and it's not something that we wanted to cherish or be proud of. And that's when I went back a little bit, and I learned something from my own mother's lesson, that is showing resilience in times of adversities. That's when my problem was finding time for myself. So I really saw it as a problem, and I tried to make some escape plans to find time for myself. And that's where my escape plan one came into picture. Taekwondo and high school ambitions. At first, I was not very fascinated about Taekwondo because getting kicked and getting punched was not fun. But then gradually I realized I learned from my failures. And it taught me to be mentally strong. It grew me to be a leader. And it took me to places which I never imagined. And that also shaped my high school leadership as well as ambitions, like I wanted to be the topper of my school and a few other things. It really shaped me to a better person. And this was me. When I did my first championship, I remember I lost. This was not the only loss, I lost several other matches. And from here to going on to represent India and in Open International with Nepal, I went on to win silver medal, and that was altogether a different experience. Well, while this escape plan, one was partially solving my problem of finding more time, responsibilities grew. And there was an inflection point where I was out of high school and I really need to think about what do I do with my bachelor's. And I had to really think about an engineering entrance exam which is super competitive, where over more than 1.5 million people give the test and less than 20,000 people get an entrance. And I had to clear that. In order to do that, I needed more time. And that's when I made escape plan 2, where I wanted to get to a hostel. I was resistant, but eventually I was made to go. But it was just after 3 days, I went back home crying. The hostel was terrible, I had food poisoning and homesickness and whatnot, but that failure taught me a lot. That failure taught me to be more determined when I'm posed with such opportunity again. And my ambition didn't stop because, again, it was laser focused. I wanted to give a better life to my mom. So then I went on to my escape plan 3. Before that, I want to ask, how many of you have made similar escape plans or some other plans when you were posed with some adversities or any situation? Maybe you can help me raise some hands. Well, there are a few, sure. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's when my escape plan 3 came, where I cleared my entrance exam. I was able to get to this university called as National Institute of Technology, Warangal. Again, the family resisted. They wanted me to stay back. But then I persisted. I was like, no, I have to leave. Otherwise, I'm going to be a frog in a well. I didn't say this to them. But I said to myself that, like, come on, I have to go out and really pursue my ambitions and ensure I get a better living for my own mom. So that was the only sole purpose that was driving me. And that was a leap towards independence for myself, liberation for myself. And after that, I never really made any escape plans. And this is where I learned this lesson, right? Resilience is not about overcoming challenges. It's about transforming them into your own strength. This was the biggest takeaway I took from my own journey, which was inspired by my mother. And that takes me to the second lesson, that is purpose beyond personal success. Well, I would like to ask, how many of you had some dreams or goals for your own self on your personal journey or professional journey? Maybe you can help me raise some hands. And you have achieved them. Well, like most of you, I had my own goals, milestones, and other things. And some of them include, I wanted to become a school people leader, and that was a fancy thing in those days in my high school, where there were 1 or 2 positions, and it was a well-contested election where you are the leader for about 3,000 people, and about 600 people voted that election. And I won that. I dreamt of becoming a school people leader. I was able to achieve that, and I was over the moon. And later, I aspired. I used to go to school every day, looking at this board. It is a bit blurry, that was the only image I could get, I'm sorry. I was going to school every day, seeing this board, thinking, my name should be on the board. I should top my board exam someday and I should be there. And I had an additional motivation that I would get a scholarship for my future education. And that was a very distant dream at that time, because I was never in the top 10%. But I self-believed myself that I could do this. And I was there. And to everyone's surprise, I taught the school and I was able to get there. And then after then, my entire childhood, milestones came together, goals came together, I kept achieving, some didn't happen, but that's fine. But my biggest purpose since my childhood was to support my mother. And by the time I could graduate, that big monumental purpose didn't really seem to be a purpose, because by then my mom was self-sufficient and she was doing pretty well, earning very well, and that was like, I was super happy by then that I didn't have to solve that, took a natural conclusion. But post that is when I went into a lowest point of my life, when I was transitioning from a student to a professional, and I was really trying to discover myself, trying to find my purpose, what is my next path. And at that time, I went into introspection. That's when I realized my purpose is not just about supporting my family or hitting some milestones, it's beyond. And I discovered my purpose or my passion was in solving problems. My was in creating impact and helping others. So that school of thought really allowed me to get into the path of entrepreneurship and problem solving at a global scale. And the biggest takeaway I took in this is purpose is not found in titles or awards or accolades, but it is in the impact we create. With that, let me bring you to the third lesson. It's about personal agency and taking action. Let me ask this quick question. How many in the room are entrepreneurs? Maybe you can tell me sometimes. Well, that's great. Thank you. Well, my entrepreneur journey was full of roller coaster. I failed with 5 startup ideas. It took me 5 years to establish a reasonably working startup. We still fail, and we love failures that way. And I still remember, even in the current startup, we had existential crisis where our products failed, where our co-founder decided to leave at some point in time because of personal reasons, and then there are several hundred rejections that we faced from prospective customers to investors to people. But our journey isn't about these failures, but it is about the impact that we are driving. It is about the commitment that we have towards our vision. We strongly believed we have a large enough purpose that in the process of building this vision or in the process of achieving this vision, our lifetime would be sufficient. And we knew it is going to outlast our legacies, and that was large enough vision we had. And in my startup journey, I took one inspiration from my mother, that is about the transformative power of education. I was always brought up with the school of thought that if you impact someone with education, it doesn't just transform them, but it will also transform people around them. And I was taught education is one such asset that will stay with you forever, unlike materialistic things like fame, money, which might stay with you today, which may not stay with you tomorrow. And that school of thought really helped us to achieve some purpose. I mean, we never saw education as a commodity. We always saw it as a means for a better future. And that's where we ended up providing education on AI and data science for free, for everyone. And then fast forward to today, we were able to impact more than 300,000 people. And that's when we see the several challenges we have faced, it's not about the obstacles or hurdles or overcoming those hurdles that gave us gratification. But the beauty of gratification is when you see the impact happening at the ground level. And that's where I would like to talk about the key takeaway. Personal agency is about taking control of your narrative, making choices that align with your values and purpose. And to sign off, I stand here to not share a narrative of a victim, but I'm here not a narrative of a victim of my circumstances, but I'm here to share the testament of the power of resilience, purpose, and personal agency. And my journey taught me that our circumstances do not define us. It's our actions that do. Thank you.